Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. This morning we had the new drought monitor released here, and we're looking at the data through August the 12th. And a couple of things to take note of as you look at this map is where we're releasing some change here as of late. So to see that on the drought monitor, just go back up to the top, hover over maps, go to change maps, and once you get here you can see based on different time lengths what the change has been. So over the last week we've seen some drought stretching for parts of Arkansas in through the Red River Valley of the South into central Texas develop, a few pockets in parts of the plains here, and then in the northern plains and also in the Appalachian Mountains. All right, but if we stretch this back even further, let's go back to the last month. A couple of things to take note of is look at the remarkable improvement of the drought in parts of the desert Southwest. Of course, we've had a very, very strong southwestern monsoon this year. So it is important to take note of that, just given that when you look at the original drought monitor, it still shows extensive drought in this area. But we've undone a lot of that with a lot of this precipitation. Now from here, I would like to show you how much rainfall we've had compared to normal over the last 30 days. And you can see throughout the Intermountain West, many locations here are well above the 250, in some places well over 350% of normal. Throughout the midsection of the country, I would just best define what we've seen in through here throughout much of the last month as a lot of scattered storms. I want you to keep that in the back of your mind because as I think about this pattern through mid-September, I think we're going to continue to see a lot of that. All right. We will answer the question at the end as to what we think might happen late this fall going on here in the West. If we're going to get a pattern shift to bring in some better weather across parts of the West. But what I want to do next is just take a look at what our soil moisture looks like up to this point. So this is the top 40 centimeters or the top 16 inches. And this is valid through August the 12th this morning. And big questions to be answered are we going to see improvements in these areas in the coming days and weeks? Will the tropical system named Fred come up through the Appalachian Mountains and help erase some of the drought that's been in here? Because we have seen in this area some huge thunderstorms as of late. And do we expect actually any flooding as we head toward our harvest time period? Because when you look back over the last week, this would be the 5th of August through the 11th. Each open circle on this map represents a different location where we've seen some severe weather. And many of these storms have put down extremely heavy rainfall as well. But an area that's been hit repeatedly over the last few days has first of all been here really in northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin, stretching here over to kind of the borders of Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, and also along the Appalachian Mountains and through here into the mid-Atlantic. Had some big hailers in the middle of Kansas as well, but to see this many late reports this year, this particular summer, nearly 1,500 again in the last week, shows us how active this pattern has been as of late. Now, checking in through 4 o'clock here on Thursday afternoon as to where we've seen rainfall over the last 72 hours. This slowly sagging front into this area, we have seen storms just repeatedly build on a boundary that's been moving through this area. And some places here I've picked up well in excess of 6 inches. There's a lot of flooding right here in my backyard. I live right very close to that area. Now, if you ask yourself, did we see this coming? Was this well forecast? The answer is absolutely not. Yes, we saw the boundary. But even if you looked back at this morning's, I'm talking early this morning's model runs, did they see the heavy rain setting up in this area? Absolutely not. This just shows you how challenging it is at times to predict even things as we would think as simple thunderstorms forming on a slowly moving boundary. But there have been some pockets of flooding stretching through this part of the Corn Belt. The South has been open to a lot of daily convection, and we've seen here even more heavy rains over parts of Southern California, but really anchored over Arizona. And there's a lot more rain coming to that area very soon. Because over the next week, we're going to look at this 3 different ways. The WPC, we're then going to look at this with respect to the GFS and the European together and draw some conclusions there. Over the next week, though, that slowly sagging frontal boundary keeps moving toward the south and east. And most models will take what's left of Fred by Saturday here, possibly strengthen it as we go into the Gulf there and take the moisture right up along the spine of the Appalachian Mountains. Now you get to the west of here, you're going to see a lot of just scattered storms, and we could be drier in Texas and Oklahoma. But the southwestern monsoon, while it might be limited in its northward extent, extremely heavy rain in through here, so we're going to see flood watches posted. Then, as we get into early next week, this trough is diving into Idaho and Montana, and there's going to be great upper level support for storms in through this corridor. But if you're on the other side of this line in parts of the upper Midwest and Great Lakes states, we're going to go over on a drier time period here, beginning once this front finally sags far enough to the south. So I think this is probably the best representation of what our next 7 days is going to look like here from the WPC. Now let's get in and talk a little bit about this tropical system named Fred. And I'm going to show you an animation throughout the day today of infrared satellite temperatures. So remember, when you look at these, the brighter those cloud tops, the colder they are and the deeper they are. So Fred was here going over the island of Hispaniola last night, and it really kind of got torn up here. You almost notice it doesn't look like there's much left of it. And it still has to go over Cuba, so we still have to go in this direction, which means it'll likely stay a tropical depression for a while until it's able to get back over this part of the Gulf of Mexico, where it should re-strengthen back to tropical storm status. We do have another one that we're following here. This was given early this morning, about a 60% chance of continuing to develop into a tropical depression, and by the weekend should make its way over toward the Lesser Antilles, given its current steering currents. Now, speaking of those steering currents, I want to show you what they're going to look like tomorrow. A lot of it's going to hinge on this weak mid-level ridge right here. So the flow's coming around it like that, and what's left of Fred as a tropical depression is probably going to get pushed a little bit farther to the west and take a run just like this because of the presence of that ridge. But from there, we are expecting it to curl on around, although the GFS model has this system kind of fizzling out and dying in here. I'm going to show you those differences in a few moments. But what should we kind of rely on? Well, let's go take a look first at what the European model guidance says from the 12Z run. So we can see the ensemble average track is coming through here, and it's going to take a few more days to get to the panhandle of Florida. And then what's left gets pulled around, kind of pushing up against a frontal boundary that'll be draped into this area. We're going to watch out for this area to get a lot of very heavy rainfall. And remember, we saw earlier, some of this area was in drought up to this point. Now, the National Hurricane Center, this was their latest update. In fact, let me just refresh this to see if they maybe got another update in there while I was preparing to record. It seems like they got the same one here. So we do notice staying a tropical depression here as we get into Friday morning, but possibly re-strengthening as we cut across the Florida Keys on Saturday back to a tropical storm. Now, the farther it stays to the west and the more time it stays over the warmer ocean water here, that would increase the chance of this possibly reaching weak Category 1 strength. But once it gets inland, it's going to become a flood threat primarily, with decreasing to tropical depression strength. Now, looking at some forecast maps, I'm just going to draw it because they've kind of bounced around a lot. But it's going to be in this corridor right in through here where I think we have our best chances of seeing wind speeds that could be gusting over 60 miles an hour as this comes in early next week. That's what I'm going to be watching very carefully. Now, total rainfall, let's just look at this from the European model first. We're zoomed in here over the southeast, and as we bring this system on shore, so let's just get it there. There we go. I know you're not seeing the southern tip of Florida, and I apologize for that. I should probably expand this view, but it's going to be a more east to west gradient in total precip, where we're going to see anywhere from about an inch on the eastern side of Florida to maybe over 2 to 3 inches in the west. Now, here we are. This is Monday morning at 8 a.m. And as we go through Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, we've now identified that corridor of heaviest rainfall. And along that corridor, there's the possibility of 3 to 6 inches of rainfall. The European model gives the greatest chance at getting above 4 inches of rainfall. That's what you're seeing here, the chance of getting above 4 inches, just offshore, right here on the Panhandle, and then again as we have the aided lift of the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, and that weak frontal boundary that'll be pushing up against it as well. So we could have some flooding here across parts of the southeast as this tropical system moves on through. Now today, what I've been watching all day long, because it's been hammering where I live, has been this stalled out boundary right here, and this is through late afternoon what our satellite imagery looks like. Now if I just take you back to this morning, in fact you'll see the sunrise, there it is. We can see that out west, maybe before we even talk about this, look at all the smoke that's still here spread across parts of the Pacific Northwest and California. But this boundary filled in the gaps in through here, and put down just a tremendous amount of rain that stretched from parts of northern Missouri and southern Iowa right here along almost like I-72 to I-74 in Illinois. Now, in addition to that, we did see more scattered storms in the northeast, and we're watching this area closely later today. And look at the storms still popping on the Appalachian Mountains, producing some locally heavy rains. Outside of that, be honest, I've been kind of fascinated to see the sea breeze come in down here in our southern part of our Cotton Belt. In fact, let's just do this. This is my in-depth video. We got a little bit of time. If we zoom in here, just watch this. You're going to see as these images load, the leading edge of the sea breeze advance really far inland, all the way in through here. Ready? So as we step back, this is going back in time, the storms pop, ready? Right here. And then the outflow, can you see it? Moving farther to the north, initiates new storms. They blow up. These are your afternoon convective storms that happen over parts of Florida. And now you can see the whole direction of the wind flow by looking at the small cumulus cloud field that's all pulling around, something like that. And that's going to be important for the eventual steering of Tropical Storm Fred. All right. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, let's go take a look. Let's zoom back out here at where we're going to continue to watch for those severe storms later on this afternoon and this evening. We do need to keep an eye on parts of Illinois back into Missouri. Stronger storms could still extend through Indiana and Ohio, but this will be the area we're going to watch most carefully extending into New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire. That's day one. Now that front slowly slides to the south. This is by tomorrow on the 13th, and the tail end of it here in parts of the high plains of Colorado, Wyoming, and Nebraska. That'll be a target area tomorrow for severe storms. But then getting into the 14th on Saturday, that's when we start to just really have to keep our eye on where the tropical system is going to be coming in here and just a general risk of thunderstorms on that weak boundary that extends all the way back to the Four Corners states. Now, the big feature that I'm watching is pretty far away right now. Now, get your bearings here. This would be Alaska, so we'll get it outlined there for you. And this is the Bering Sea. Now, what I'm watching is this trough here and this trough there. Now, those are very subtle features in the flow, but what I'm going to be watching is for these two things to work in tandem, such that when they come here through the Gulf of Alaska into British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest early next week, that the southern trough gets tossed farther to the south and then runs up just like this through the northern plains. Now, this is still a long ways away in terms of distance from the United States, and we're still talking about a few more days until it gets here. But this is what I mean. We're going to use the European model first to see this, but these are those two features here and here that I'm watching. Now, today, there's the broader trough, all right? But watch what happens to this one and this one, okay? As I play through Thursday, getting into Friday, now getting into Saturday and Sunday, here they go. The first trough sweeping into this area, cooling things down, bringing in unsettled weather. Now watch, as we go out here farther into Monday and Tuesday, the second piece is there. And as we go from Tuesday into Wednesday, it gets tossed on the southern side of the broader trough that develops, such that by midweek next week, we have a flow pattern doing that. We're going to keep open Gulf moisture, and this could initiate storms across an area that, as you saw at the beginning, is very dry. Now, what do the models say about this? Well, I would like to show you both of them because there is some major disagreement about Tropical Storm Fred, but surprisingly some good agreement about when those troughs are going to come through the northwest. So GFS is on the left and the European is on the right. Now, they both have the same low over the Hudson Bay today, which means there is this boundary in through here on which we're going to continue to see those storms kind of come through. So this is getting into the overnight hours. They're all still producing more rain in this area. See that? That's this afternoon and this evening. And then as we move through Friday, getting into Saturday morning. Now notice this. You don't see much of anything from the GFS on what's going on with Fred. But it's a bit better resolved in the European, although not much. And there's this frontal boundary that's very clear in the European on Saturday morning. It is there in the GFS. We just don't see the same kind of quantity of precipitation. So then as we go into Saturday afternoon and evening, in fact, let's just go all the way out to Sunday morning. Both models are saying, all right, I think Fred's rainfall is going to be there and its center of low pressure is going to be there. Meanwhile, high pressure is building into the Great Lakes. There's one And here it is in the GFS. And if there's any scattered storms on the backside of it, they're just going to be that scattered here Sunday morning. But as we play this on forward, this is where things get quite interesting. This is Monday morning, afternoon, and evening. Now, both models open up the southeast for a lot of scattered storms. But the European model has a very robust signal of where Fred could be. And in the GFS, it seems as though it's still hanging out down here off of the Florida Panhandle. The GFS does have those storms that are in place here, but a much different scenario. And they both are also trying to bring storms up here on Monday evening through the high plains. But as we continue, what you end up getting here is that the GFS just falls apart with what was going on with Fred, whereas the European continues to carry that heavy rainfall right here over the Appalachian Mountains. And then just moving on here to next Wednesday and Thursday, that's when the main feature I've been watching comes in, which is that deep wave that was over the Bering Sea now starting to show up here next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and increase the rainfall chances in this area. But you notice that this entire simulation here, that the European is much wetter, and we better just take a look at what those differences are. So first, this would be the 12Z European model forecast for precipitation anomalies over the next week. And as we discussed, we're drier in through here. The frontal boundary sags, scattered storms over the south, and there's Fred. Southwestern monsoon, very healthy. Our waves come in next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now, from here, take a look at the difference. This is the 12Z Euro, 12Z GFS. This is there, but a lot more storms in the GFS right here in the Central Plains getting into the Western Corn Belt. Same thing over here as well. But no symbol, or no signal, of Fred getting beyond about that point. And that's a unique, a substantial difference. Because remember, you come back over to what the National Hurricane Center suggests, it's going to get in there. So I'm watching that very carefully, all right? And just to put it all together, I'm going to show you this map. And feel free to pause it and look closely. But just a reminder, where you see these colors, the European is wetter, all right? And where you see these colors, the GFS is wetter. And there's a lot of differences. And to be honest with you, looking at what we call dprog DT, the model performance over the last few days, I'm going to once again kind of side with what the European model has been suggesting with this pattern. All right? We'll see if I'm right next week. Okay, interestingly enough, the 12Z runs from the GFS ensemble and the European ensemble look very similar. There's still a broad trough feature that runs right in through here, through North America, with a ridge over parts of the Canadian Maritimes and New England. And the net effect of that is to give you this precipitation pattern for week 2. It's just looking stormy in through here. And as you see in the ensemble, could be stormy over in the Ohio Valley and parts of the Appalachian Mountains to the mid-Atlantic. The GFS, as it has constantly done, has kept things dry along the coast. What's the European doing? Well, we've got this. There's that same trough feature. There's a ridge here and a ridge developing in this area. It's a bit flatter in its flow, but you almost get the same precip pattern out of it. So I see some similarities here in the week 2 pattern. I'm going to come back to what we've been discussing. It appears that we're going to be stormy across a broad sector here of the United States, getting into parts of Canada as well. Let's talk temperatures next, because we still have across a broad sector of the country, right in through here, heat advisories, and all of this is excessive heat warning. Flood down here, air quality issues back in the mountains here of Colorado and Wyoming. Let's see what those temperatures did today. This was the forecast high temperature for today. We can already see the advancing cold front right in through here. And let's see where it gets to by Friday. So now we've advanced that cold front much farther to the south. The heat's still going into the northeast, and we're still very hot in the Pacific Northwest where those excessive heat warnings are. We're cool in New Mexico and Arizona simply due to the cloud cover and rain. But getting into the weekend, the cooler air continues to slide into the Ohio Valley, eastern Great Lakes, all the way back to the southern plains. And going into early next week, the heat returns into the upper Midwest, really returns to the northern plains. But again, this is out ahead of that trough that's trying to get in here by that time. So let's see when it does. Going into Monday, into Tuesday, there it is. So that's what the flow is going to do. There's the warm, moist, unstable air, and I think it's just going to pop in this area with a lot of storms. So if we keep going out here, that's how things look next Wednesday. Going from there to the day 5 through 10 pattern from the European model, we see that day 5 through 10, cooler bias here, where we're going to be bringing in some cooler air with that trough and the rains. Where we're wet back in here, we see it as well. And overall, because of the front that slid through, we have cooler conditions here. Day 10 through 15, models are really spread on this. We don't see strong anomalies because the flow is quite open and spread. And that's something I really want to think about moving forward. Because I'm asking myself, how is the rest of this growing season going to shape up? And what, if anything, is going to block the pattern up? Because we can sometimes get that in late summer and early fall. Well, I don't think it's going to be coming from the MJO, because the European weeklies say, bring it out here to phase 1 where it is right now. Sweep it through 2, 3, 4, and 5 over the next month and a half. Now that's a lot of movement in the MJO. And when I start to see that much movement, that tells me that the tropics are not getting stuffed up and blocked up and causing problems. Are we having any issues when we think about this with the transition of where the best rising motion is? Well, overall, we see good rising motion over Africa to the Indian Ocean, a lot of subsidence over the Pacific, but good rising motion here over this part of the Atlantic. And that's why when we look out there longer term, I don't think anything's going to be slowing down in the tropics through at least the next 15 days. And we're already watching another tropical system behind Fred. Go to the upper levels of the atmosphere. Are we losing momentum anywhere? In other words, are we seeing these green shadings, especially right here between 30 north and 60 north? We aren't, which means if I saw some green shading in here, that would tell me that the North Pacific or the North Atlantic, doesn't matter, but one of the two pieces of the jet stream is going to be slowing down considerably. And that's a good signal for a block. And I just don't see it. In fact, momentum is still above average right now, although it's been decreasing a bit as of late. So when you put all those things together, I say, well, what are the models saying for much of the month of September? And they're trying to just do a lot of precipitation recycling, a lot of open Gulf transport, and they're making it very stormy across a broad sector here of North America. Very stormy. And they've been consistently doing that for a while now. And I can't seem to find a reason to say that that's going to be wrong. Now, you know as well as I do that it's not everybody that's going to get the rain in this situation. It doesn't work like that. But the fact of the matter is there will be moisture to be used to produce storms in this area. But I'll watch it carefully to see if anything shifts, because we know that can also happen very easily as well. Now from here, I want to talk about the long term. I know it's kind of a smaller map, but September, October, November, we're going to be seeing kind of the redevelopment of some cooler water in through here, which would indicate stronger trade winds. That's that La Nina signal we've been discussing. What I'm going to spend some time this weekend looking at here is the validity of these forecasts for September, October, November, because despite the wetter forecast through September, all of the long-range models are trying to bring in a drier harvest. This is what the NMME suggests, and I showed this to you earlier, and this is what the Europeans shows. So you can see that both of them for September, October, November are favoring drier fall-like weather. Not completely dry, just drier fall-like weather in the midsection of the country. But we all know what can happen. Sometimes you can get a ring of fire set up, like a high builds in here and the flow just comes around it and floods out this entire area. I did that a few years ago. But you do notice that at this point, the West, especially Northern California through Washington, possibly getting better chances here of having above normal precipitation early in their wet season. So I'm going to work on diagnosing this and getting a better picture as to why I think it's going to possibly look like this, and I'll get it reported back to you, okay? Thank you so much for your attention. I'll talk to you again on Monday.